Greetings, I'm Rob Chapman, and first of all, apologies for my voice. I'm on a day off in the middle of a tour. It's a really stupid thing shooting a video mid-tour, but why not? I thought I would do. Today, I'm going to be telling you all about the basics of electric guitar gear, equipment, things that you might need to know if you're a complete beginner, or even if you haven't even bought a guitar and you're really considering starting playing electric guitar, or even if you've been playing for a few months. I'm going to be telling you about guitars, amplifiers, different kinds of both, effects pedals, and some of the peripheral gear that will help you on your way to electric guitar domination. Insert lightning bolt. First of all, I guess if you are a complete beginner or you're just about to buy your first electric guitar, it's going to be great. You're going to have a great time. There'll be moments of complete frustration and moments of complete joy, but you'll absolutely level up your life. So well done. Let's start by looking at the different kinds of sort of normal electric guitar. This is a Telecaster. This is one of the normal kinds of guitar. Normal kinds of guitar is a phrase I'm using and I'm putting it on my ass. And really what I mean is there are four old ancestors from which all of the guitars kind of sprung up and evolved in electric guitar land. So the Telecaster was really known for its country roots. In fact, originally these were even used as bass guitars. But now it's gone from much more of just a country guitar. I mean, obviously country is a huge genre, but also this covers things like rock, like Bruce Springsteen, some metal stuff. It's a very versatile guitar, quite a bright sounding instrument, and it gives you clear, great, clean tones. But if you drive it hard, it's gonna rip your face off. So Telecasters are great. You see them everywhere from like Bruce Springsteen, the Stones, some metal stuff. Really cool guitars, very simplistic. So let's start with the basics. Here's a volume knob. If you turn this one way, you're going to get more sound. Turn it the other way, you're going to get no sound or less sound. This is a tone knob, so this gives you brighter sounds or darker sounds. So with it full on, it's fully bright. If you roll it off, it's darker. It cuts off some of the high sounds. This switch is a 3-positional switch. We call it a blade, a 3-way blade. And what it's doing is swapping between these microphones that we call pickups. And they take the magnetic sound from the strings and transfer it to the amplifier. So what you get is in the first position, we're picking up from this one pickup here, which gives you a bright, clear sound. In the middle position, it's both of them. And then in what we call the neck position, it's the top one, which is a warmer sound, because if I just strum this with the amplifier off and hold this by the microphone that you can't see, it's quite warm if I pick here and brighter if I pick here. So it's picking up those natural sounds. So what we do is for lead, we kind of get a brighter sound, so you cut through the mix. And for rhythm, and this is just very generally speaking, sweeping statement, this is a nice rhythm sound because it's warm and fat and kind of sits back a bit more. Lead, rhythm, generally, but not always. In the middle position, it's a mix of both. This is the neck, this is the body. We call this a scratch plate because it prevents you from scratching the body, but also it's a really simple, cheap way of having electronics removed. This neck is bolted on. It's a very cheap, simple, basic construction for a guitar, but it works really well because if you break a neck, you can unbolt it and put a new one on, but unbolt it and fix the neck even. So guitars are made from different kinds of woods. This neck is made from maple, and some people say different kinds of wood give you different kinds of sounds. Now, in terms of shape, you can see this body's been cut away here, and this bit we call horn. This is called a cutaway because it's been cut away. So this has been cut on one side and is therefore a single cut kind of a guitar. It's a flat top. You see how flat that is? So it's one piece of wood, normally, that's just been CNC'd flat. And down the back of the neck, you'll see a stripe. And that stripe is where they've taken some wood out, they've routed the wood out, and in here they've laid a metal rod called a truss rod. The truss rod can be adjusted at the top of the neck And what it does is it bends, it flexes, and it allows the neck to be pulled or pushed into position so that the neck remains straight despite the touring pain it will suffer with different weather changes, moisture, and temperature. There you go. Telecaster. Now, because this is a Fender Telecaster and they invented the Telecaster, to be polite, a lot of people that make other instruments this shape will call them a T-type. T, obviously, standing for Telecaster. Let's put the gain channel on the amplifier on. Stratocaster. Okay, this is another normal kind of guitar. The Fender Stratocaster, or as we in other guitar companies call it, the S-type, because we refer to Strats as an S-type. Again, it's very similar to the Telecaster. It's got the scratch plate. This time it has 2 independent tone knobs and 1 volume knob. It has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-way positional blade because you've got 3 pickups this time. Again, maple neck, although these completely differ. Sometimes the necks and bodies are made of different kinds of woods. This one is a beautiful custom shop Strat, but it's a Strat nonetheless. And there are many different kinds of Strats and Tellies and Les Pauls and SGs that you'll find on the market. I suppose the main difference between a Strat and a Telly, other than the fact that it has 3 pickups that give you lots of different possibilities for tone, has a tremolo. Now what this is a bridge that the string's attached to and goes through the body. So the body's routed all the way through. The strings go through the bridge and you can push the bridge back or pull it forward with a bar we call a whammy bar or a tremolo bar, tremolo arm. And it slackens the strings off or pulls the strings tight. You don't go this way. A lot of people, when I started teaching years ago, used to think that you put the bar in and you do this. But you don't, you push it down and put it up, and it slackens the strings off and pulls them tight to give you different kinds of pitch from the strings. So the differences in tone are dramatic. The Strat can give you really bright sounds or really warm sounds and some really in-between woody sounds, kind of hollow sounds. Let me show you. When I've tuned the beast. So now she is tuned, this is how she sounds. We're starting, as ever, if it's in the back position on the blade, it's the first pickup. Next one up is the 2. Next one is the middle position. Then it's a blend of these 2. And then it's the front neck pickup. Neck, bridge, middle. Start with the bridge. One up. Gives you an in-between sound and it's very woody. Middle position. Last middle. Neck position, the warmest. Great guitar, S-type, Strat. This is double cut in 2 different places, double cut. You'll see these terms popping up in all sorts of different guitar design because these guys really initiated this. Again, it's a bolt-on neck construction. This time, there's no stripe down the back of the neck. In fact, what they've done is they have taken a piece of wood on the fret board, the bit that the frets are pushed into, and laid it on top of the neck, making a sandwich. But before they laid it on, they put the rod down the middle, so you can't see where the rod has gone. But the rod is in there, trust me. There you go, Strat Telecaster S-Type from Fender. Okay, moving along, this is a Gibson Les Paul Standard. So it's a great guitar, and they're all great guitars. Whereas the Stratocaster and the Telecaster had single coil magnetic pickups, these have double or humbucking or hum cancelling pickups. What that really means to a beginner is that these are louder and they don't give you the hum that sometimes we find with electric guitars is caused by the lighting you get, some of the dimmer switches and things, and just bad electricity, dirty electronics. You find sometimes you get a hum when you plug the guitar into the amplifier. With humbuckers, you tend not to. Sometimes you still do. They're much louder, they give you more push into the amplifier. If you're using a valve amplifier, it pushes a part of the amplifier we call the preamp and gives you more gain. So traditionally, people using humbucking guitars use them more for rock, metal, that kind of thing, but they're used for everything. There are no rules in rock and roll, okay? Other than if it moves and you don't want it to, use this. 4 controls this time. We've got 2 tones and 2 volumes, which is really handy because you can set the guitar up in such a way as to give you a rhythm sound and a lead sound by just flicking a simple switch. Let me show you how that works. So, if I put both the tones all the way up, but I'll bring both the volumes all the way in, and I'll pretend that down, which is this bridge pickup, is my lead tone because it's brighter, then I want my rhythm tone to be quieter, so I'll back it off. So this was my rhythm pickup, this was my lead pickup. So if I go, see, it's louder now when I flick to my lead pickup. And that's a very simple and useful way to set up a Les Paul. Now, of course, you can also affect the tones. You could make the rhythm tone darker. It will be anyway, but you can make it much darker. Or you could match the lead tone to the rhythm tone. So, for example, now I've made the lead tone almost as dark, but not quite. So you get a match of tones, but again, you can change the volume. So I can have the rhythm quieter and the lead louder. So there's all sorts of things you can do with the 2-tone, 2-volume configuration on a 3-way switch, not a blade, a switch. One way, middle way, bottom way. And again, they label it rhythm and then treble, which I always thought was kind of interesting. This bridge is very different from the Strat bridge or the Tele bridge. The strings go over these saddles and then latch into this bar at the back here. So there's a little ball on the end of the electric guitar string. Electric guitar string is a very deadly weapon. It will kill every finger you own as soon as you allow it to. One end is very sharp and one end has a ball on it, like this. If this was a string, this is a ball. And you thread the string through the holes there, and the ball holds it in place, it latches in place. And then you thread the string around the pegs at the end here. Differences in wood. Well, Les Pauls tend, not always, to be made from mahogany, but on top, you can see there's a slight curve. And that's because they've put a cap, a thick cap of maple on top. Not always. And this maple is carved, generally by CNC, to give you a nice carved top. So it's an arched, carved top. The fretboard, or the board they've laid on top of the neck here, is made of rosewood. Although it can be ebony, it can be maple, it can be all sorts of different kinds of wood. And the neck is also mahogany. The neck all the way up here, and it's glued in to the body. So the neck has a tenon, and it's buried in here and a little bit under the pickup and glued in place. So it's a glued on neck. Pros and cons, well, if you break the neck, you're kind of screwed. I mean, you've got to take it to a luthier, get it fixed, obviously you would do anyway, but you need to have a real neck repair. You can't just unbolt it and put another one on. You've got to be careful with the Les Paul. They're weighty, you don't want to drop them, it's not good for the neck. But other than that, they're an incredible rock machine. Great cling tones and great, really known for sustain, singing solos and rock riffs. So here's a bright clean tone for you. Here's a middle position. Here's a neck position. Let's give it some gain. Neck position. In the middle. You'll notice it's much louder. There's more gain from the amplifier if it's valve. Great guitar. We call this a single cut shape. Other brands would call this a single cut shape, like the Telecaster. And it's much heavier in weight, much louder. Les Paul. Well, a bit like the holy trinity of Star Wars films, the immortal three, the only three, the Strat, Tele, Les Paul form really the forefathers of electric guitar. But there are others, many others, that are tweaks on designs and eventually evolved into the massive smorgasbord of guitars you see now. Here's one of them. This is an SG. So the SG by Gibson is like a Les Paul because it's got two humbuckers, it's got 4 controls, it's got similar wood spec. It operates in pretty much exactly the same way because really it is a Les Paul. But the body is slab like a Telecaster, like a T-type. It's double cut like a Stratocaster, but then it's glued on like a Les Paul. So it's a combination of all 3 elements in a way. And it has the Strat's pickguard. So what they've done is they've taken the Les Paul and they've made it much, much lighter in weight, and they added easier access to the upper fretboard by cutting away the bottom. Just like our friend, the Stratocaster. Now, something else I forgot to mention on the Les Paul is that they have what we call binding. So either side of the frets that go across, there's this plastic binding that kind of covers the ends of the frets to ensure that you don't get any sharp frets on your hand. SG is a great guitar, sounds very similar to a Les Paul, but a little bit different because of the way the body is constructed. But this is a good example of a different kind of an electric guitar from the holy trinity. The 3 that you must possess and own as soon as possible. So we talked about electric guitars. Let's now talk about electric guitar amplifiers. And essentially there are 2 or 3 different kinds of amplifier. You need an amplifier. Well, you don't need one, but if you want to play to lots of people, you need an amplifier. You can just play them acoustically in your bedroom, and I did for years, and it sounds cool and it's really good work for you. But if you want to play to lots of people, amplify the signal, you need an amplifier. Now, let me talk about the 2 essential kinds of amplifier. The first one is what we call a combo. So here's a very popular combo nowadays. This is the Blackstar HT5. And what this represents is everything you need in one small, useful package. It is the three sections of an amplifier: the preamp, the power amp, and the speaker. So the preamp is the section where the sound can be tweaked to have more gain or less gain, or brighter or darker tone, and sometimes things like reverb, occasionally chorus if you're lucky. Some amplifiers have different kinds of things built into them, but this, for example, just has reverb, gain, like overdrive, things that make it sound like a dirty signal like rock or punk, and the treble, the bass, the mid frequencies. Very important to remember, put lots of mid in the signal. I'm helping the world one person at a time. And because guitar players are the mid trebly area of a band. We're not the bass area of a band, that's the bassist's domain. So put a lot of mid in your signal. As you can see, all the controls are on top, nice and easy. It's fairly lightweight, you can take it to a little pub gig. If you put a microphone in front of it, you could absolutely gig a little tiny combo like this. And it contains the preamp, which is where the sound is sort of chosen, sends the signal to what we call the power amp, where the sound is converted into a big signal that it gets pushed through the speakers where you hear the sound. Preamp, power amp, speaker. Now, in a valve amplifier, which is kind of what this is, although it isn't entirely, and what that definitely is, they use little vacuum tubes, and we call them valves in England. I think you call them tubes in America. And you drive these, they're like light bulbs, you put a voltage through them. And they provide you with tone, with sound, and with overdrive if you push them hard. And in the preamp section, if you push them hard, they give you gain, they give you overdrive, they give you this great crunchy, soaring, supersonic sound. In the power amp section, they do the same, but very, very subtly. And the louder you drive an amplifier, the more the power amp section provides you that ringing, bell-like, sustaining tone. Otherwise, it's just clean. So there are some amplifiers that almost don't really have a preamp section. They're more like a power amp and a speaker with like a volume control. And those are very old amplifiers. And you have to drive them very, very, very loud to get any kind of singing sustain from them. Whereas modern amplifiers that have a preamp section, a preamplifier section, they're easier because you can have them overdriven at lower volumes. So combo, preamp, power amp, and speaker all in one. And they're very affordable normally, very practical. They sound great. This one definitely sounds great. However, it is fairly practical to have the preamp and the power amp separate from the speakers. This is an example of that. This is a preamp and a power amp, and then this is a speaker. So the preamp and power amp are in a little box we call a head. And what this means is that I can swap the head between different kinds of speaker. Now, actually, you can kind of do that with combos, or some combos as well. There's a cable you can put in the back and you can attach it to an external speaker, but not always. And they're quite heavy if you get big ones. A little tiny head is great. Nowadays, you don't need very big amplifying heads. Back in the 60s or the 50s or early 70s, you needed huge 100 watt, 200 watt heads because there were no PA speakers. There were no PAs. You didn't mic up a guitar signal. You went straight through 10, 15, 8, whatever, big speaker cabinets and drove it straight into an audience, and you needed hundreds and hundreds of watts. Nowadays, most venues will mic up your speaker and put it through a PA. So you don't need big amplifiers and lots of watts. And this is a good example. This is a 20 watt PV head. It's going into this 412, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the signal from the 412 and I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to plug the head straight into a 2x12 or two 12-inch speakers rather than four 12-inch speakers, so that you can hear the difference. And it makes you realize that the speaker cabinet makes up a big part of the overall sound that you hear. So I've got a little 2x12 speaker, one 12-inch speaker here, one at the bottom. I put it in front of the 4x12. It's exactly the same settings, but I'm plugging straight into the 2x12. Here's how it sounds with the same settings. Sounds completely different, huh? Different. Not good, because tone, or the way things sound, is subjective. It depends on whether you prefer pizza or Indian or Chinese or Thai food. I love them all. I love all the different kinds of tones. So that's a 2x12 speaker cabinet opposed to a 4x12. There are pros and cons. This is much lighter weight than a 4x12. If you're miking up a speaker in either cabinet, you're still miking up a speaker. It's the sound of the speaker. You don't get the sound of the air around you unless you back it off or use lots of different microphones. So live, this may very well sound pretty much the same as this if we're just putting a mic in front of the one 12-inch speaker cone. So on the front of most amplifiers, you'll find two switches. These are quite important. There's a power switch and a standby switch. And the reason for this is that we need to warm up part of the internal circuitry before you really turn it on. So you put the power on first and you leave it on standby for a little bit. Now, some people will tell you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 minute, basically leave it on for a bit. And then you turn it on once the tubes, the valves and everything is warmed up and it's ready to go. A bit like some cars, you see. Moving along the panel of the front, you'll see a pretty standard layout. Most amplifiers have what they call two channels, a cleaner channel and a dirtier channel, and they normally will share an EQ, like a bass, a middle and a treble EQ. Now, like I said, guitars aren't really bass dominant in the mix, so I've not got a lot of bass in there. This amp is quite bright, so I've taken a little bit of mid out. By the way, anywhere from 5 down I would call out, and anywhere from 5 in I would call in. So I've got a little bit of mid out, but that's unusual for me. And then treble I put a bit in. This has got reverb, which makes it sound like it's in a big room or a big hall, like echoes kind of vibe. Forget this for now. This is the overall volume of the amplifier, how loud the overall amplifier is. This drives the power amplification section. And then I have a button here which changes the channel between the clean sound and the dirty sound of the amplifier. And this is how much dirt, or how dirty the sound is, how gainy, rocky, punky the sound is. This is how loud channel 1 is, the clean volume. So let's rove around and look for some peripheral bits, accessories and things that you're going to need as well if you're starting out. I've got a lot of them here, so this is going to be kind of cool. So starting with picks and strings. Now, I use a very particular kind of plectrum, but I don't want you to think that you need to use this. This is just what I use. This is quite a thick plectrum. And it doesn't move, it doesn't bend at all. See how thick it is? Very thick. Sorry, my nails are dirty from gardening. It's got a very sharp end, and I find this really useful for playing rock and metal because the plectrum doesn't bend, it's a constant, not a variable, and I find that useful in playing. The best plectrum to use is the one that you prefer to use. That's all there is to say on that. Use whatever you find works best for you, because everyone's got a different kind of feel. I know great players use thin plectrums, great players use thick plectrums, sharp, dull. Experiment. I've got thousands of different kinds before I settled on that, and I've been playing for years, and like 20 plus years. So start off with whatever you buy, experiment, enjoy it. Straps. So this strap is made of leather, but you can get different materials. Now, what's different about this strap is it has strap locks. Now, there are different mechanics behind how these work. This one is pretty cool. It's got a button, you press it, it releases the strap from the end here. Actually, this is for a different mechanism, but it doesn't make a difference. So you push it in, it locks in place, press the button, it releases. And that's good, because the last thing you want is to spend, hundreds of dollars on a guitar, or pounds, and then drop it because the strap didn't hold it. Honestly, please buy strap locks. Such a useful thing. I dropped so many guitars as a kid, such a pain in the ass. Strap locks. So moving on to things like cables and strings. I've got a few in here. So again, use any brand that you can afford or that you like. I'm using these. They come in different gauges. So they come in numbers that tell you the gauge. 0.9 would be the thinnest string. 4.2 would be the thickest string. So thickest on the low bass side, thinnest on the treble side. And they range from sort of, from like an 8 on the thinnest, or 7 or 8. And they go all the way up to sort of, I mean, I'm using 52 on the top, sometimes 60, which is good for if you want to drop tune your guitar. So because I tune my guitar very low to get that kind of metal sound and fit in with my vocal range, I need thicker strings to tune lower to maintain the tension. So the thinner the strings, the softer they are. The thicker the strings, the harder, but you can tune them lower. Now, I showed you some pickups. You can buy them separately. So here are some pickups I've got that I'm going to put in something. In fact, I've got quite a few pickups. And these are all individual. These are all Seymour Duncan, but there are loads of great brands out there like, you know, EMG and DiMarzio and Bare Knuckle and great brands. And you can take these pickups and you can learn how to wire them in to your guitar to get different kinds of sounds. These make up a big part of the sound. Pickups, amplifiers. So it's important to experiment. Here's the strap locks I use. Important to experiment with the sound you can get from pickups. I guess lastly, kind of an important thing is a case. Now, if you're going to be playing out a lot and you're going to be traveling in a car and getting to venues, a case is a really good idea. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes depending on what you buy and how much you've got. Some guitars come with a case, like this guitar here. Some of them don't, and you need to buy a case like this. Is a second case I bought. I believe that's for a prototype guitar. And there are some pretty good brands like Gator, make pretty good hard cases. So just make sure that when you buy your beautiful guitar, that you keep it housed in a hard case if you can. So lastly, and by no means leastly, and this is going to destroy your wallet over years and years and years, and well done, it'll be fun. This is a pedal board. Now what I've got here are things that will affect the tone of my amplifier by plugging them into two different areas. So the first area you can plug through is you put your guitar with the lead in here. It goes through here, into the amplifier, into the front of the amplifier, the input. And what you can do there is things like wah-wah, like the wacka-wacka-wacka kind of porn sound, or overdrive or distortion, things that make it sound more rock, metal, punk. Things like a tuning pedal are great in the front. Tuning pedals are really important, by the way, although it's great to learn to tune by ear as well as with a pedal. But then in the back of most amplifiers, there is a section that sits in the power amp part of the amplifier, not the preamp. And that's what we call the effects loop. And for there we put things like chorus or delay or reverb. Sometimes the amplifier won't have its own reverb, you know, a flange, all these different kind of coloring sound effects. And they go straight into the power amp section, avoiding the preamp, and they give you different kinds of tones. And the effects loop is on the back of an amplifier. You'll find a send, which goes to the in, and then the send from this goes into the return of the effects loop. So here's the back of the amplifier, and you can just see the little valves or tubes there that would glow up when it's on. Here is the effects loop I spoke about. There's the send and the return. Sends on top, returns on the bottom. Now normally these are side by side, but this amplifier does it slightly differently. So you would plug in here and go from the send to the in of your pedal. Go through the pedals and it goes back into the return. And this goes through the power amp section. Over here we have the speaker impedance. So this is quite important. You match this to the speaker you're using. So you want to read the manual you've got to make sure that this is good. Disclaimer, disclaimer. This is set to 16. Most 4x12 speakers like this will be 16 ohms. Sometimes you get a 212 and it might be 8 ohms. Like this, you can set it to 8 ohms. But basically, read your manual and find out which one you need to use. There's the fuse and there's the power. Good luck. Enjoy playing the guitar, it's a great thing. And if you have any questions, you know what, put them in the comment section below, because the guys that watch these videos are really supportive, really cool, really friendly. We're a community and we love each other. So take it easy, good luck with your journey. And I wish I could start again because I'd enjoy it all over again. Take it easy, guys. I've been Rob Chapman. Chappers out.
If you've got a finite budget,
yes,
do you spend the bulk of it on your guitar?
Say £1,000?
Yeah, let's say, okay, I can go with that. Let's assume we have £1,000 budget. Do you spend the bulk of it on your guitar and you buy a cheaper amplifier? Or do you spend the bulk of it on your amplifier and you buy a cheaper guitar?
So, we've got a grand each. We're in Andertons in Guildford. And we're very excited because I won the toss, which means I get to have the good amp and the affordable guitar. But